Hi there, welcome back to another gameplay video for Stellar Horizons. This is a playthrough of the campaign game. This is part 4. Remember, turn on your Klingon subtitles so you can see the notes and corrections that I post. Okay, when we left off, we had just finished the year 2039 and we were moving into 2040. This will be a new thing that we're doing, the economic phase. So I've already kind of mapped out what's going to happen in the economic phase. There's a lot of moving parts, and I didn't want to have the gameplay video with a bunch of humming and hawing from me. Quick overview of where we're at, and I've already given some people some income here with respect to their political markers. So this is Asia's situation. They have these points, and I gave them everybody at the beginning of the economic phase earns 2 political markers. So that's the situation for the Asians. The Russians, I noted there was a correction in the last video. Near the end of the last video, the Russians lost their CV2 when it was leaving the near-Earth asteroids. And I pulled 3 biology markers. That was incorrect. When a CV is lost from an engine malfunction, you earn 3 engineering markers. And those last 3, the 211 engineering markers, were what they got, instead of the biology markers that you saw me pull in the video. And here are the Americans' markers that they earned, including 2 more political points. Okay, so the first thing that happens in the economic phase, collect political markers. Every faction earns 2 more political markers in addition to the ones that they had from the end of the last decade. And roll for events. So let's roll for events. There's one event right now, later on in the game, in the later decade, we would roll for 2. We rolled a 50. Okay, the event rolled 50%. Immigration, the player with the fewest settlements can add 2 to any base they control. If multiple players are tied for the fewest settlements, all tied players with a base can add 1 settlement instead. Well, there's only 1 base. Everybody has 0 settlements. My reading of that means that the Russians can add 1 settlement to their base in Earth orbit. All right, as you can see here, I've already done some pre-work on the income for both technology points and money. I've also pre-done the technology builds for everybody, and we'll go through some of this. But what that required me to do was roll initiatives. So I actually rolled the initiatives for the different players ahead of time before this video. One thing to note, there's a policy tree, and all of the factions start off with 1 policy. It's relevant right now for 2 places. The Russians start off with a policy that gives them a plus 20 to the initiative roll. For income purposes, both Asia and the US start off with plus $2 billion on income over their stated income that they get. With that, the Russians decided to spend 1 of their political markers. Each political marker that they spend gives them an opportunity, gives them a plus 10%, and that's done in reverse initiative order, and that's where we're at right now. So the next step here in the economic phase, roll for initiative. And although Russia had a plus 30%, they rolled very low. The US also rolled low, and Asia rolled high. And so they rolled like an 82. So where that ended up is Asia now is in first place in the initiative. Russia stays in second place, and America drops to third. All right. The next thing is in the economic phase, step C, diplomacy. Happens in reverse initiative order. So we haven't talked about all of the uses of the political markers. We've touched on them maybe a little bit. One thing is they can be exchanged one for money, which I think is the least efficient use of them. They can be exchanged for 2 technology points, and I think that is a good use of them. They're also used here in the diplomacy step. So we have these diplomacy tracks, and although on all of the factions right now I've just put the other 2 player factions markers, the other 4 factions are in the game as well and are all at neutral. We'll track them if somebody chooses to make an attempt to change their relations with them, and that probably won't happen unless one of the non-player factions gets a base on the board, and we'll be seeing that if that happens this economic phase. With that, North America is going to spend, so the first attempt that you make to change foreign relations costs you 1 political marker. If you want to make 2 attempts, the second one costs 2, the third one costs 3, and so on. So North America is going to spend 1 of their political markers in an attempt to improve relations with the Russians. And we'll roll the dice for that. It's a single die roll to 6 or less. And all of these attempts are declared in reverse initiative order and then resolved. A 2. So that improves the Russian-American relations, and that's symmetric. So both players mark it on their board. North America is doing that because Russia has the ability already, based off of their policy. The other side effect of having a military policy is that it allows Russia to move the diplomacy to the embargo, and embargo, and then there's war. And so America wants to make it more difficult for Russia to go to war with them. That's all of the diplomacy. The next thing we have, D, Earth and base production. So I have totaled up here for each of the factions. So you see, this was all the chits that we saw laid out before. Political, 7. So they had 5 plus 2 more, gave them 7. For their biology technology, they had 14 points that they earned from the chits. Each faction, you'll see, has a production chart for Earth, and it's done by decades. So this is the decade 2040. We see 2030, 2060. So for 2030, 2040, and 2050, we use the top line, which means that North America earns $30 billion. They get 2 physics, 3 engineering, and 3 biology. And that's different for each faction. You can see the numbers here for Russia and Asia. So I've accounted for those numbers there. So biology, 14 plus the 3 income that they get from Earth, and then the 2 asterisk, that is from the benefit of the signs of life technology. which they received for their exploration at Mars, giving them a total of 19 biology points. Physics, similarly, 11 that they earned from chits plus 2 from their income. 13. Engineering worked the same way. The money, I've laid that out. So we saw 30 on their chart. Now, remember, everybody has support limits. So North America's support limits. They can support 3 REs, 1 CV, and 1 base. If you're below your limits, then you earn income. And so the money that North America earns, they +1 for being under their RE limit. They're at their CV limit, so there's no income from that. And they're 1 under their base limit, so they earn 1 there. Remember, everybody also had earned a mission, and each mission that you've accomplished earns you an income every decade. And you saw I had to scratch it out. I forgot about the policies. So we saw those policies both for the US and Asia. They had a +2 income. So they will give the US $35 billion to work with. Russia has some of the same numbers there, and you see them. Now over here on the right, +3 from the space station. So the Russians built the space station at Earth orbit, and it's a small research station, and you see the settlement that we added to it. The research that's provided by the base, or Earth provides +3 of any research. So I just marked it here as +3 and waited to kind of figure out how the Russians wanted to add that to their pool based off of likely builds. And the money that they're going to start the turn with is 33 billion. The Asians, they had 5 political markers. You see 17 biology and so on, and their money totaled to 34. So everybody's close on money, 33, 34, 35. And that's the Earth and base production. If there were other bases in the systems that they had built, then there'll be income, and we'll probably see that in the next decade. Mining bases. The next step is resource transportation. So that's not going to happen. Nobody has the technology. It's a technology here. Trade routes can transfer up to 5 resources after production. It says see rules. It allows players to transfer resources between bases and or the Earth, up to 5. And there's additional technologies, improved trade routes and advanced trade routes that increase those numbers to 10 and 15. So that would occur at this step, but nobody has that technology. And only Russia would potentially be able to take advantage of it because they're the only one with a base. The next step, F, assign non-player faction bases, pirates, asteroids, and trade markers. Let's take care of that. On each disk, I'll use Venus as an example. There's a set of percentiles. So it starts, Mercury is 1 to 4. There's also years in the flyby boxes of when those systems, so Venus 2100, but Earth is 2040, Mars is 2050. So we start off with the non-player faction bases. We roll a percentile die, and if the number that's rolled is on a system that's active, we rolled a 99, so that is out of the Cooper belt, and that's not relevant until the year 2140. So that there's no non-player faction base that comes onto the board. We would do Pirates and Asteroids in the same manner, but Pirates and Asteroids do not have a chance to appear until the year 2050, so we're not rolling for them this decade. The next thing, for bases, player bases that have settlements, and all non-player faction bases, if there were any, receive a trade marker if they don't have one. Well, the Mir base now has a settlement, and so there's a random pull, and I pulled this marker. Sorry for the glare. Sell 1 fuel for 2 billion. You can sell more than one, but there's the limit based off of the settlement size would be 2. So a player could sell a fuel for up to 2 fuel and earn 2 billion for each. The next step, G, develop technologies in reverse initiative order. So that's the new initiative order. And I kind of worked this out. So the strategy here is you have to either buy a technology or pass. And if you pass, then you can't buy any more technologies. So since the technologies get cheaper as other players buy them, remember there's a 3-point discount for each faction that already has the technology down to a minimum of 5. So, improved spacesuits. America is blue, Russia is pink, and the yellow is Asia. Asia could buy this technology for 5. Same thing with Signs of Life. So you want to try to force other players to buy technology before you so that you can maximize the discount. America has a special ability. Subtract 2 from the cost of a technology if you were the first to develop it. So it doesn't hurt them as much, but that's a 2-point discount if nobody has it, and a 3-point discount if one other player has it. So they still would prefer to have other people buy it first. Anyway, I went through and figured out the technologies on a round by round basis. I figured out where the players wanted to use political markers to supplement their technologies, and also figured out where the Russians wanted to use their 3 technology points. I believe it's the way the rules as written that 3 technology points needs to be decided before you start purchasing technologies, but I went ahead and kind of made the assumption that Russia was able to calculate and analyze the situation and figure out where to best apply their 3 points that they're getting from the research base. Now, note about political markers. At the end of this phase, and research in general, any points that you have left over are halved. So all of these markers in the game get turned into points, which are tracked here on the tech chart, and whatever you have left over at the end of the technology purchasing is halved. And also all of your political markers at that point are also turned in for either $1, or effectively, if you haven't used them to purchase the technology, you'd get 2 technology points, but then it would get halved down to 1. So I'm going to go ahead and, based off all these decisions, we'll go ahead and just talk. The first one, the Americans chose to do trade routes. That's a physics technology, which has a printed price of 15, but the Americans only had to pay 13. Russia picked CV range, or advanced astrodynamics, giving them a CV range of 1, which allows them to get to Mars. They got the $3 discount, or the 3 tech point discount, because the Americans already had it, so they paid 12 for that. And Asia, their first pick was Signs of Life. They only had to pay 5 for it, and so on. So everybody made a number of purchases, and Asia, even though they started off way behind, they're taking advantage of the discounts and catching up quite nicely. So I'm going to mark the tech chart and we'll review the results of that momentarily. Okay, so I've marked everything. We'll take a look here in the biology. You can see that the Asians were able to pick up Signs of Life. Everybody was able to pick up short radius artificial gravity, which changes the CV recall rate to 45. And if you'll recall, Russia has their ability is 5% improved over that. That's their special ability. So they're going to be down to a 40. The Russians and Americans were able to pick up space habitation, which decreases the cost for base construction. And the Asians were also able to pick up the improved spacesuit technology. In the physics, the Asians were able to pick up orbital rendezvous. Both the Russians and the Asians were able to pick up advanced astrodynamics, giving them CV range of 1 and giving them access to Mars with their crewed vehicles. And the Americans and the Russians picked up trade routes. It may be useful in the next decade, but it's also a prerequisite for CV range 3. So they're going ahead. And the Americans had a lot of political markers left over. They ended up going ahead and exchanging those for points and picking up. They're not really interested in the combat value of this, but it also is a prerequisite for dealing with radiation. Down in engineering, everybody was able to research crewed vehicle 3. So all the pushes for all that engineering tech paid off for everyone. And both the Russians and the Asians were able to get 3 usable launch vehicles. So that's going to benefit them greatly. The Americans had 1 political marker left over, and they're going to keep it as, or let it be exchanged for money. The Russians actually had 2 political markers, and they're going to use that ability to, at the appropriate time, sorry for the glare. They'd like to ditch their current mission, which is for Mimas, which is a moon of Saturn. That's Saturn's 7 years away from Earth. So they're going to pull another one, and at the beginning of 2040, we add these 2 markers, Mars and Comet. Those are both explorations with a crewed vehicle. The Comet is considered to be at the orbit of Mars. So we're going to add all of those chits, and the Russians are going to pull a new one, see if they get something more interesting than an outer system. And not really. They got even further, Pluto. The next thing in the economic phase is settlement growth. So the settlement, we roll a percentile, a red die, similar in the way that we've been doing exploration. There's one settlement at Russia's base. So if we roll, the number of settlements are lower, then it will grow by 1. So we're going to roll a red die, and if Russia gets lucky with a 1, that settlement will grow by 1. They got a 10, so there's no growth. And then the last thing that occurs is everyone gets to select a new policy. And we do that in reverse initiative order. So the Americans go first. Their crew vehicle support limit is currently 1, and they, now that they can build CV3s, they think they'd like to be able to support more than that. If they're over their limit during the income phase, the first one that you're over a limit by on a CV costs you $4 billion. That's expensive. They don't want to worry about that. Next up is the Russians, and they're going to, got to think about this one. The Russians are actually going to do space diplomacy. So draw 1 extra political marker. So since that's worth 2 tech points, that's actually, I think, worthwhile. And the Asians are going to do the same thing. So those are the policy tree choices that everyone makes. Okay, so that's the 2040 economic phase, and then we move back into the regular turn sequence that we were used to following, starting with the building and resupply phase. We've returned all the markers, political and tech markers, back to their respective piles. Everybody's got the bank, their money that they've earned. Let's see here, Asia has got a crewed vehicle that needs to be resupplied. They have a mission for Triton, which is a moon of Neptune. Russia has no crewed vehicles right now, and they've got a mission for Pluto. And North America has a mission for Mars, and they also have a crewed vehicle that's reserved and needs to be resupplied. So everybody's flush with cash now. I'm going to figure out the builds, and we'll be back in a minute. Okay, I have to remember to do the build phase is done in reverse initiative order. So this time, the Americans build first. They have this mission at Mars that they'd like to accomplish. They're going to spend $8 billion to build a rover and a launch vehicle too, with the idea that rover has a spectrometer, and at Mars, the current world card gives a bonus for having a spectrometer. So they'd like to get a depletion and earn that mission. In addition, everybody at this point is interested in getting some bases out here, but if they build a base too soon, another player could come and explore and change the world card. So I think there's a little bit of ability in this game to have, if you build a base while there are still explorations to be done, you could lose the advantage of the base that you. Next up on the building, the Russians, they're going to build a rover and a launch vehicle 3 because they're planning on building a CV3 since they don't have any. And the public mission is Hygeia. They're in the center of the turn track, which is an asteroid out at the main asteroid belt. And finally, the Asians, they're going to build an orbiter that also has a spectrometer, and they're also interested in further exploring Mars so they can determine if that's a good location for a base. So we move on to the movement phase. There's no vehicles in any of the heliocentric transfer boxes. Next up, so movement's done in reverse initiative order, starting with the Americans. So they're going to make a movement roll for their rover. Remember now everybody has the reusable launch vehicles, so if you roll above a 25, you recover your rocket. The Americans get a 55. And their rover heading to Mars, goes from Earth, Moon, flyby, and on the one, so we'll put things over here. Venus, nobody's doing anything at Venus right now. Next up are the Russians. They roll their dice. Their engine check of 53, so their launch vehicles recovered. Their rover, Earth, Moon, flyby. They're going to the asteroid belt, which is a distance of 3 from the Earth, but they used a launch vehicle 2 sizes larger, so they get to reduce that time by 2. So their orbiter is going to be 1 turn away. And finally, the Asians, their movement, launching an orbiter. They rolled a 74. And their orbiter, Earth, Moon orbit, flyby, and goes to the 1 box. That's all of the movement. Next up is the exploration phase. And that's done in, so Asia first, they don't have any exploration. Next up, Russia, they don't have any exploration. And next are the North Americans. They had 2 orbiters left over from the last decade. So we'll start off with the Moon. Moon's value is a 4, the orbiter's a 1. They need a 5 or less on the red die. They got a 6 and an 80. So the orbiter does not have a successful exploration, but it does not malfunction. At the main asteroid belt, all of a sudden they remembered, oh yeah, Hygeia is a valid target. And so Hygeia is a 4. They have a 2, so that's 6. But it's subtract 1 for an orbiter at the main world if it's exploring one of the satellite systems. So that's going to be a 5. But they'll give it a go. They got a 2, but they also rolled a 12. So that orbiter is going to malfunction. First, they're going to get an engineering marker pull for Hygeia. If they earn a depletion, they'll get that mission. They know they can probably get the Mars one this turn, but they would like to try to deny the Russians a success there. And they pulled a 1. And for their malfunction, they got a 2. And that orbiter is removed. Base construction phase, or trade and base construction phase. So nobody has anything right now. Of course, there is the opportunity. Somebody brings 2 fuel up to this base, and anybody can do that, but it's more valuable to the Russians simply because I think everybody, can sell. The base will consume up to 2 resources based off of its size, so it would be $4 billion, but they'd have to spend $2 billion just to buy the fuel in the first place on Earth, so that's a profit of 2. But if Asia or North America trades with that Russian base, then they also have to pay the Russian player $1 billion. If Russia does it, they don't have to pay themselves. So it's a $2 billion profit for the Russians and $1 billion for Asia or North America. Nobody's doing it right now, but we saw how tight money gets. So I expect somebody will do it. And there's no base construction. And so that is going to end the turn. And we'll move on to 2041. Okay, for the build phase of 2041, the Americans go first. They're just going to spend $2 billion on Earth to resupply their crewed vehicle. The Russians aren't going to do anything this turn. They're going to wait and see how some of these other explorations by everyone turns out. And the Asians are going to try something different. They're going to spend $2 billion on the crewed vehicle. They're also going to buy Launch Vehicle 3, which they hope to recover, but they know that it will eventually be useful for a crewed vehicle 3. They're also going to build a flyby, remote explorer, and a probe, and that will cost them $7 billion. And the destination for the flyby and the probe is to head out to Neptune and try to get that mission. So, in the movement phase, first we do the heliocentric transfers. Those guys arrive at the flyby box. This rover moves to the flyby box. The Americans launch their crewed vehicle. They get a 51, so they recover the launch vehicle, and the crewed vehicle is going to head out to Phobos and Deimos as their destination. Earth, Moon, flyby, and into the Mars 1 box. Next up for movement is Russia. Oh, sorry. The Americans also have this rover. So that runs an engine check and gets a 96. And that rover's destination is Mars. So from the flyby box, Phobos and Deimos, it's going to land on Mars. The Russians, they have movement. They've got their rover in the main asteroid belt. Engine check is a 27, and it's going to go, follow the dotted lines, to Hygeia and Pallas, trying to get a depletion and earn a mission. Next up, the Asians. They're going to launch their crewed vehicle using an LV-2. Engine check. 72, so they recover. And they're also going to head out to Phobos and Deimos. It's their goal. Earth, Moon, flyby to Mars. So we've got 2 crewed vehicles. Of course, neither player knows necessarily where they're going, but they see that they're going to the Mars system. They're also going to launch their flyby carrying a probe on a LV-3. They got a 36, so good. They've recovered that launch vehicle. All right, so Neptune is a distance of 11 from Earth, but they used a launch vehicle 3, so they get to subtract 2, and puts them 9 turns out from Neptune. So we put a +6 transfer marker and put them in the 3 box at Neptune. The other movement for Asian is this orbiter. Engine check, it's cocked. They rolled a 100. The orbiter is going to move into orbit around Mars. I think that's all of our movements. Exploration, starting with the Asians. So they have the orbiter. Its value is a 3. Sorry, I can't really read that. There you go. A 3. They've also got a spectrometer, and that does matter because of the silicate rocks marker, so +2. And Mars is a 4. So that is 4 + 3 + 2 is a 9. 9 on the red, or lower on the red die. They got a 6 and a 48, so the orbiter continues to operate, and they pull a biology jet. Which is a 1. That's all of the exploration for the Asians. Next up is Russia. We've got the rover here. There's a 4 on Hygeia, and the rover itself is a 4, so they're looking for an 8 or less on the red die. They got an 8, and the malfunction check is an 84, so that's okay. They're pulling an engineering marker for the exploration, and that number is a 1. The Russians have no further exploration. The Americans have a few. We'll start with the moon orbiter. So 5 on the red die or lower. They got an 8, and they rolled an 8 for the malfunction check. So that's not a successful exploration, and this orbiter malfunctions, and they're going to pull an engineering marker. And they got one of the 5s. Good points, but they would have liked to have gotten the depletion. Next up, Mars rover. So the Prospector has a 4, Mars has a 4, but the rover also has a spectrometer, which gives them another +2, bringing them to 10. So that's an automatic success. So they'll pull a biology marker. Still need to roll the malfunction, which is a 67, so it's okay. We did get lucky this time. I got another 5. So that is a depletion for Mars, and because it's a spectrometer on that, they get to pull 2 world cards and see if they like either one of them, if they apply. Okay. So both of these could apply. Frozen methane, any world but Venus, impact basin, rocky, and Mars is rocky. Well, the frozen methane, if they're looking for fuel or supplies, the frozen methane is better. For supplies, they're equal. It's a great source for fuel. And so I think the Americans will. Now my understanding is this silicate rocks, I think we talked about this in the last video, this was one that was out, and if it's discarded, it gets discarded. This one was pulled but not selected, so it goes back into the draw pile. In addition, so that's the world card portion of the depletion. The Americans also earn a political marker. We reduce this to a 3. Oh, of course, it's great news for the Americans. Forgot they have their Mars objective, so they earn that, which gives them another political marker. And they get to roll for another, they get to do another life check. So this is another 12% chance. And if they're successful here, they'll get the next life technology. So they got a 70 something, 76. I think that is all of the exploration for that rover. And that's all of the Americans' explorations in the trade and build, or trade and base construction phase. There's nothing happening, so we move on to 2042. All right, build and resupply phase for 2042. First thing though, when the North Americans earned their mission last time from Mars, just a moment ago, they need to pull a new mission, and they got Jupiter. They're not going to try to do anything with it. They can, again, you can only hold on to a number of missions equal to the current decade. So we're in the second decade, so they can have 2. If they earn additional ones, they just have to turn them in for a single victory point, and they don't get the long-term benefit. Jupiter seems like a pretty good place to hold on to for the next decade. All right, building. Starting with the Americans. They're going to build an orbiter. So everybody's going to take it a little bit easy. People are interested in building CV3s and building bases, but they want to see how things play out with the exploration of Mars, and that's going to take quite a bit of money. Anyway, the intention with this orbiter is to send it to the main asteroid belt to start the exploration there and earn them some research points. The Russians are going to build an orbiter and a probe with the intention to send that to Venus to get some physics points. And the Asians are actually going to not build anything, saving money. They spent a bunch already building the Launch Vehicle 3 and sending the probe out to Neptune. First up is movement. In reverse initiative order, before we do that, we have the transfer box stuff. So these crewed vehicles arrive at Mars, and I'm not going to change the camera, but every turn for quite a while now, the Asian flyby at Neptune moves down to the 2 box, but it also still has a +6. Okay, American movement. They're going to launch this orbiter on an LV-2. And the roll is a 76, so they recover the rocket. And they're going from Earth, Moon, flyby, and they said they're going to the main asteroid belt. That's a distance of 3, but they get to subtract 1. So that's in the 2 box. Over here at Mars, they're going to roll for that crewed vehicle 2. They got a 22, and they're going to move from the flyby box Phobos Deimos. This has a +2 exploration there on the ridged terrain. That's all of their movement. The Russians, they are launching their orbiter and probe on an LV-3. It's overkill. They got a 46 though, so they're okay. And that orbiter and probe are going from Earth to the Moon to the flyby and back over to the Venus box. And the Venus 1. Even though it was an LV-3, the minimum time that it can ever take is 1 for interplanetary transfers. The Asians, they're not launching anything from Earth. They do have the crewed vehicle in the Mars flyby box, which they got a 30. And they're doing the same as the Americans, Phobos Deimos, and there. So the Americans and the Asians are kind of copying each other right now. Exploration starts with the Asians. So they have the advantage in that way. So this crewed vehicle is a 4, has the mobile lab icon, so it gets to roll 2 red dice. 4 plus 2 plus 2 is an 8. So 8 or less on a red die, they did it, but they also rolled an 11. So the vehicle is going to flip and be recalled. So first, Phobos and Deimos is engineering. They've earned a draw. And they got a 2, so that's not a depletion. And then the crewed vehicle is going to flip, and that earns him a biology. And I got a 3. Their next exploration is this orbiter at Mars. It's still, this new one still has a spectrometer bonus of +1, so Mars is a 3, their orbit is a 3, for a total of 7. And that includes the bonus. Red is a 4, so that's a success, and the malfunction is a 95, so that's okay. They pull a biology marker for Mars. And they got a 1. That's all of the Asians' exploration. Next up are the Russians. The Russians just have the rover at Hygeia Palace, and they're still trying to get a depletion there to earn the public mission chip. Their roll, need an 8 or less on the red. They got a 10 and they rolled a 9 on the malfunction check. So that rover is going to be removed, and they're going to pull 1 engineering marker. And they got a 1. Next up are the Americans. They'll do their crewed vehicle here. This one also has a mobile lab, so 5 plus 2 plus 2 is a 9 on the red die, and they get to actually roll 2 of them. They did get 9, but similarly they rolled a 7 on their recall check. So they get an engineering marker first for the exploration, which is a 2. Their biology is a 1. And that crewed vehicle flips. The next exploration is the rover on Mars. Mars is a 3, the rover is a 4, and they get the +1 bonus for spectrometer. So an 8 or less on 1 die, or on the red die. It's a 4, and they rolled a 60, so the rover keeps going, and they pull a biology marker for Mars. And that's a 2. No depletion. I don't think there's any additional exploration. Next phase, trade and base construction. Nothing's happening. That's going to end the turn, 2043. Okay, building. The Americans are not going to build anything. The Russians are going to build a rover for $4 billion. They have a launch vehicle available. The Asians also building a rover for $4 billion. Movement. First, the heliocentric transfers. American orbiter goes to a 1, and over there, that's going to drop down into the 1 box. It's 7 years out. American movement on the board. Their crewed vehicle here needs to head back to Earth. They rolled a 97, so it goes Phobos to flyby, goes to the Earth 1 box. Next, the Russians. And part of that movement, I failed to move That Venus, missed that one. So the Russians are going to move this orbiter, which is carrying a probe, into Venus orbit. It's a 9. It's successful. Additional Russian movement. They're launching the rover on an LV-3. They're going to send it back to the main asteroid belt. That roll for the launch is a 20. So their LV-3 does not get recovered, but the rover does take off. Earth to Earth orbit, moon, flyby. A distance of 3 to the main asteroid belt, but they used a rocket 2 sizes larger, and that rover will go in the 1 box. The Asians, they are moving their crewed vehicle. Engine check, 32, that's fine. It's going to end up over here in the Earth 1, and they are launching a rover. They're going to use the LV-2. It's a 35, so the launch vehicle is recovered, and that rover's destination is the near-Earth asteroids. Earth, moon, flyby, and around over here. Exploration. So the rover is a 4. This is a 2, and there's a bonus 4 for this world card. So that's an automatic engineering success. The rover has a malfunction check still, which is a 34. It's okay. They got a 3, so that is a depletion. Earns them a political point. It's going to reduce this 2 down to a 1. The world card is escarpments, rocky or icy, so that applies. So let's compare. They both have a 3 ore, 1 supply, 2 fuel. They're really equivalent to engineering. So it really comes down to they've got a rover, so they're going to keep the rover. Bonus. Their next exploration, the orbiter at Mars. It's a 6 and a bonus for of 1 for the world card. 7, so 7 or less on the red die. Is a success and a 51 on the malfunction check. So they pull a biology marker. Which is a 1. Excuse me. That is all of the Asians' exploration. Next up, Russia. Over here at Venus. The orbiter, so we haven't used probes, I don't think, in this playthrough yet. An orbiter or a flyby, I guess a rover potentially can, but maybe not. can use a probe. So if they carry a probe, it's a one-use thing, no malfunction check required, it's just consumed. You can see though it has a 9. On the turn that you use the probe, the parent vehicle cannot also do an exploration. So we're going to use the probe. 9 plus Venus is 5 is a 14. So that's a guaranteed physics, and we still roll a red die. If we roll a 4 or less, they get to roll or pull a second physics marker. There is no malfunction check. They got a 6, so just 1. The probe is consumed. The physics marker is a 1. There's no other Russian exploration. And next up are the Americans. And their only exploration is their rover on Mars. 4 plus 3 plus 1. So an 8 on the red die. They got a 6 and a 65, so that's a success and no malfunction. Their biology pulls a 2. And that's it for the Americans. Trade and base construction. There is none. And that will end the year 2043. We're going to stop here, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks.